You guys hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, so John, thank you. Yeah, it has been great, as a number of speakers have said, to have a lot of company that's actually junior to me now. For a while, I remember when I was elected in 2013, I went to the Fairfax County Legislative Send-Off, and I was the only new member of the delegation that we had for a while. And so, it's been great that we've had some turnover, and yet we still have a lot of very familiar faces. The folks like Patrick and Alfonso and George that have been great mentors to me over the years, but we've got a lot of new faces replacing some of the folks that weren't particularly helpful down there. The other thing, I think it's great to see all of you. I usually when I get to a big crowd lately, I've been asking folks, how many of you all voted for the first time in an odd year election in 2017? None of you guys raised your hand. Right? It's not that crowd. So I do think it's worth thanking you all who've been here all along, right? I mean, SALT has been here for years and years. You guys have understood the importance of state and local government and voting in state and local elections. And I am so glad that you guys have a lot of company now among folks that hadn't always paid attention before. And so I look forward, John, to hopefully, I'd love to spend some time in the next couple of years before 2019 getting some of the indivisible groups and some of these women's march groups that had never been engaged before. And maybe you guys can do some joint programming so they can get some policy expertise and some policy chops from those of you all that have been down in the trenches doing this for decades. So with that, I thank you guys for the work you've been doing for years and years. In 2015, I sort of on a lark, we knew we needed to raise the minimum wage. The 1010 number had sort of been the number that had been floating around, but in the grassroots and in the labor and in other places, they were really going on for a new number, which was $15 an hour. I said, well, it's 2015. Why not put in a $15? We'll do a 15 and actually I debated the $15.15 minimum wage for 2015. It's sort of like Herman Cain's 999 plan. I was going to go 15, 15, 15. And it's funny, and actually, some folks in the Richmond media market sort of poked fun at that. I said, yeah, this one's dead on arrival. And in fact, some members of my caucus said, Marcus, this is crazy. Be careful. They might actually make us vote on this. And 15 is too radical. And yet we saw in 2017 we had folks fighting over who was the first one to be for a $15 minimum wage. So sometimes it pays to be out there ahead of the curve and bring the conversation along. So I think $15 needs to be there. And in fact, it's interesting. Like I said, the worry when I put it in 2015, people were afraid that we might be, they might do this weird procedural movement, procedure to get on the floor and force us to vote on a $15 minimum wage. This year, when I put in a $15 minimum wage, they did a different kind of procedural. They moved it to the Rules Committee so that they wouldn't have to have even an open committee hearing. They finally released it from Rules with about a week to go before crossover to Commerce and Labor, who said, well, we only just got it and it's been too busy. And so I never even got a subcommittee hearing on a $15 minimum wage because they know that it's a losing issue for them and it's a winning issue for us. Virginians agree with John that no one should work a 40-hour work week and still have to live in poverty. And when you start to think about the numbers, if you do $15 minimum wage and you get 2 weeks paid leave, you're really talking about $30,000 a year salary. Try and support yourself, let alone a family or any kind of children on $30,000 a year in Northern Virginia. It can't be done. It is a poverty wage. We need to lift people out of poverty. And so, and that's at 15, right? I mean, $750 is not, is $14,800 a year. That's just impossible. So we're going to continue to work for that. I think there's a conservative case to be made for raising the minimum wage, and that's why they're actually doing it in places like West Virginia and Arkansas and other southern states there. Because, look, if you don't believe in expanding government programs and in providing government benefits, let's give people an opportunity to make work pay. Let's lift folks out of poverty so that their hard work actually pays off. I think one thing Republicans and Democrats certainly agree on is I don't want welfare to pay better than work, right? And so their answer is to cut welfare benefits. My answer is to make work pay for everybody and lift everybody up. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to my good friend, Alfonso Lopez.
There you go. Morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. My name is Alfonso Lopez. I represent South Arlington and Eastern Fairfax, the best part of Virginia. And I want you all to know that I really enjoyed the dialogues I've had with the folks from SALT. And John, you've been an incredible mentor and friend for so long, so thank you very much for being here. To touch upon the bill that I put forward, it was actually, the resistance is crumbling. that you brought up, the resistance to the bills that we were putting forward, like Patrick.
Yeah, I think 35 states have modified or
Right.
eliminated the lifetime ban. And you know, if somebody has paid their time, has served their time,
Right.
and paid their dues, why should they be punished the rest of their lives? So
Right.
that's really an important issue.
And exactly, and along those lines, it's not like we don't have the money to do it. As Mark Sickles brought up earlier, there are only approximately 17,500 people who are actually getting TANF benefits in Virginia right now. And so what does that mean? That means we have literally tens of millions of dollars in TANF surplus funds and savings, which we could be using for this program. My legislation was essentially say that if you were convicted of a drug felony and possession, and you complied with the Department of Social Services, and you completed all of your requirements through the judicial process, then you could not. There would no longer be a lifetime ban on drug felons getting TANF benefits. Now, why is that important? That is important because we're trying to avoid recidivism. We're trying to avoid having people go back into the judicial system and going back into the prison system. Because if you can't get TANF benefits, what that means is your percentage is taken out of what your family, your wife, your husband, your children can get through the TANF program. And so it just doesn't make any sense. We have the money to do it. It actually helps avoid people going back into the judicial system, and it actually helps people who aren't at fault, the kids. You've got children who are hurting because of this really egregious law that we have in Virginia. And as has been brought up, a majority of states understand that this is the wrong way to go, and we shouldn't be doing this in Virginia either. Let me just talk about a few things. And I want to really focus on that word egregious. I'll say it again. None of those bad bills that we would have to get up and talk about, the anti-LGBTQ bills, the anti-immigrant bills, the anti-environment bills, that my caucus would simply say, all right, Lopez, get up and talk. We didn't have to do this year. We literally did, we did not have to do this year. And that's because of David and Kathy and all the amazing freshmen who came in as if they were veterans. And I'm very proud of the orientation we did with the freshmen. Marcus and I and a few others in the whip operation, we did a freshman orientation where we did mock subcommittees, mock committees, mock floor fights. And what we were able to do was make sure that when they came to session, it was old hat for them. All right? I remember my freshman year, there were 16 freshmen, just like this year. There were 15 Republicans, and I was the only Democrat. And there was no mentors for me. There was no training for me. There was nothing. And it was important that that not be the case for our Democratic caucus going forward. And I was proud of the fact that we made sure of it. And the proof is in the pudding. Because our freshmen are amazing. I mean, folks like Jennifer Carroll Foy and Chris Hurst and Kathy Tran and David Reed, and the bills they put forward and how they did it and how effective they were. We are a hair's breadth away, and I don't want to be partisan about this, but we're a hair's breadth away from being able to have some serious open field running on all of the issues that SALT cares about. Every issue you care about, every single one, we have a chance of getting passed if we have a majority. That's the truth. So I'm also, as was mentioned before, I just want to touch upon it, there was only one really ugly bill about immigration this year. And that was the anti-sanctuary city legislation from Ben Klein, who's basically running for Congress in the 6th Congressional District and needed to be the most conservative person in that race. And we were able to sustain the governor's veto just on Wednesday, and I'm very proud to have stood up in opposition to that. But it's not enough. As Jen Boysko mentioned, she and I both put in the DREAM Act, in-state tuition for DACA students. That was the first bill I put in every year for the last 7 years. And the fact is, it's high time that's the law of the land in Virginia. It shouldn't just be the Chev letter, it should be in the code of the Commonwealth. And the fact is that we're this close. And as Mark is